Next up, our Friday roundtable conversation on some of the week's top stories. Secretary of State Hilary Clinton was in Mexico as the Obama administration makes the war on drugs a new priority. A new government is emerging in Israel with a shift to the right. What will it mean for the peace process? And we'll look at Pakistan and a troubling new report on ties between its intelligence services and the Taliban. Joining us for the first time, Deborah Amos, a longtime foreign correspondent for National Public Radio, and the other guy who's old hat, but always welcomed, Gideon Rose, managing editor of Foreign Affairs magazine. Nice to see you both.
Thank you.
Well, let's begin with Secretary of State Hilary Clinton's trip down to Mexico. Before she even gets there, she makes the admission that the United States is very much part of the problem. So how did that go over, do you think, Deborah?
Well, it is a dose of reality. This is a drug war that's spilling over the border, a drug war in which we supply the guns and we are the customers. So for the first time, I think you're seeing some realism in how to tackle the drug war because it is beginning to worry us. There's been talk in the media, and we spoke of this, the idea of Mexico as a failed state, which I think is apocalyptic and not true. But she's addressing this in a very smart way, and it made the Mexicans happy at least to hear the truth coming from Washington.
It sounds good, but what exactly did it really achieve?
Well, it hasn't achieved that much, frankly, and I think there are a couple of other developments that might achieve or detract more. The revision of New York State's drug laws actually is an interesting step on a sort of sane drug policy at home that might ultimately help contribute to a somewhat better situation with the ultimate problem in the war on drugs, but also this very unhelpful decision about Mexican trucks and trade is going to create a flap in the U.S.-Mexican relationship that's totally unnecessary, in my view, and gets in the way of the Obama administration's attempts to actually make progress on quelling things there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to move quickly on from that because we sort of all agreed here in previous discussion Mexico was a B subject of the week. An A subject, always Israel. Strange bedfellows here. We talk about the government that's emerging. We have Prime Minister-designate Benjamin Netanyahu, who teams up with Ehud Barak. A good pairing?
Well, I mean, Netanyahu says that he'll be a partner for peace, but I don't think there's going to be any commitment ceremony anytime soon. Netanyahu's coalition spans everything from the far right to now the sort of center left with Barak. And I think the result of a broad coalition like that is that you're not actually going to have any kind of consensus for radical action of any kind. So I don't expect there to be much progress, frankly, neither regression nor forward movement.
The very next day, Benjamin Netanyahu comes out and he says that he's a partner for peace and he will negotiate with the Palestinian Authority. Deborah, do you believe him?
Well, whether I believe him or not is not the issue. It's whether the Palestinians believe him and whether the State Department and the President believes him. He's never signed on to the two-state solution. He was a thorn in the side of the Clinton administration. So he's got until next month to form a coalition. What's interesting to me is we now are looking at a coalition that may be more acceptable in Washington. It won't be offending to the Obama administration. And it looks like that's what Netanyahu has wanted all along. And with Barak joining his coalition, that's what he gets.
Deborah brings up a good point, because the question here is, who drives the peace process, at least right now? Gideon, who is it? Is it the U.S. or is it Israel?
Frankly, I think the real driver is the Palestinians, because until the Palestinians are really willing to come to the table and negotiate seriously, the Israelis aren't going to be convinced to go forward. That said, the Israelis need to make their bona fides even more clear and show greater willingness to move forward and encourage the Palestinians, and the Americans should be doing more to encourage the Israelis to stop the things that the Israelis are doing that are unhelpful. So really, frankly, there is no single driver, and that's why there's no real progress that is likely. There may be negotiations, but it's highly doubtful they'll actually get anywhere.
And without the Palestinian agreement on some sort of unity government between Fatah and Hamas, we're not going anywhere either, because there's a real power problem between the two factions within the Palestinian movement. It has to be resolved.
And even if you got an agreement, as on the Palestinian side, the divisions internally would be papered over rather than resolved. And so that would make the unified government even less likely to move forward boldly on the Palestinian side.
Yeah.
As we know, the Obama administration unveiled its new plan for Afghanistan and Pakistan today. And let's turn to that subject. I want to quote here, as I know you're fond of doing, Gideon, Oliver Hazard Perry, who said, "We have met the enemy," and I'm paraphrasing now, "and they are Pakistan." I bring this up because the New York Times reports that, in more detail, very strong connections between the ISI, the intelligence service of Pakistan, and the Taliban. This is a nation that we look upon as one of our great allies. This is a nation we give about $1 billion a year to. What is going on here, and how troubled should we be, Deborah?
Well, we may be the last ones to know. I'm sure that our intelligence services already know this. In fact, there's been some suggestion that this was a message-sending operation through the New York Times. The ISI knows this. And so it's putting them on notice to say, we have a new strategy in Afghanistan. Are you on board? Are you not on board? The ISI has a different time schedule than we do. They look to the day when we're not there anymore. And their allies will be their allies within the Taliban today, tomorrow, and in the future. We have to find a resolution to that problem.
Isn't that smart, though? I mean, aren't they just doing a little forward thinking here?
Well, as Deb said, this is, we should not look at the alliance as absolute agreement on everything. These are sovereign states with different interests and different time frames. And the fact is, the Pakistani security elites define their interests in a way that is not entirely the same as the Americans. They see India as an enemy. They see themselves as a victim of regional encirclement, and they want to use the militant groups as proxies in their local regional conflicts with Afghanistan, with India, and so forth. And they do expect America to go away. And so basically, they want to control the militants as a tool of Pakistani policy, regardless of what we do. And that means that we can only expect a certain amount of cooperation from them because their interests are fundamentally different in some respects than ours.
And they're on a different calendar than we're on. Nevertheless, to move forward with Obama's strategy, you have to come to some resolution about this.
Deborah Amos, you got the last word. Thank you very much. Gideon Rose, good to see you again as well. Thank you both.